Welcome to the Dynasty Vipers ViperCast, where all things football are injected right to your veins. With your hosts, Matt Donnelly, Calvin Shoemake, and Jeff Mueller.
Welcome to the Dynasty Vipers ViperCast. Throughout TV, there have been several great television foursomes. We've seen the Channel 4 Action News Team, the Ghostbusters, the Justice Quartet, the Untouchables, but right now there's only one A team in daytime television, and that is the GMFB crew. Today's guest comes from us from Emory University by way of Freehold Township High School. The one, the only, Peter Schrager. Welcome, Shrags.
Man, I'm excited to come on. Awesome video, injected into my veins, vipers, snakes, whatever you want to do, I'm in, dude. This is so cool. Thanks for having me.
Hey, it's a pleasure to get you on this show here, talk a little bit of Applebee's and Chili's to kind of get started, because that's basically how this whole thing came about, is me jumping into some conversation about Applebee's and Chili's, and why is Applebee's like the worst? Seriously.
Okay. Yeah. Before I lose any sponsorship deals that I don't have, let's go through. So basically, I do a show from New York City every day, and we were on remote, which means we are in our apartments, in our homes. I live in Brooklyn, New York. I live in a small apartment with my wife and my son, and I've stuck it out through the quarantine, through all of this, and I believe in New York City, and it's actually part of my heart, and it's part of what I believe in, and I feel like sticking it out and not moving out to the suburbs and not doing something like that, like I take pride in it. Like, I'm riding this wave. I'm going to be New York through and through. It was a decision. It's not easy living in New York right now, and it's not easy to have a family living in New York. I had two co-hosts that day, Nate Burleson, who played in the NFL and is actually born in Calgary, and also Sean O'Hara, who's a Super Bowl champion with the Giants, and they both live in the New Jersey suburbs, which I don't know. It's a different life. It's much slower, but it's a much easier life. And they were daring to say that New York was dead. And my response to that was, go enjoy Applebee's, in a very flippant way. What the reaction online was, a lot of people saying, what is that supposed to mean? How dare you knock Applebee's? To which my response is, if there's a Mount Rushmore of high-end chain restaurants for the family, Applebee's is not on that Mount Rushmore. I believe I'm a Chili's guy. I would go to TGI Fridays. I would even go to a Fuddruckers. There are so many other options, and Applebee's to me was the most generic. Any town in America, walk in and have the same exact meal. New York City to me is a whole different story. No Applebee's in New York City, not the ones that I'm going to.
I love the people of New York. It's like they're all brothers and sisters. They can pick on each other, but as soon as some bully from Jersey starts to come in, it's like everyone on them.
That's exactly what it is. That's how I feel with Good Morning Football too. Like, I can pick on Kay, Kyle, and Nate, but the second I hear it from someone on the outside and they want to take a shot at Nate or Kyle or Kay, like that's when I arm up. But yes, to live in New York right now is a very, very deliberate decision. There are a million other places you can live that are cheaper, that are less stressful, and I would say, quite honestly, you can do more elsewhere. But I decided to stick it out with my family, so it's a very sensitive topic. We don't pride ourselves on Applebee's in New York City. We go 5-star, baby, and that's why we're here. The life, the culture, everything. So go enjoy Applebee's was an insult that I didn't think would take on the life it did. But Matt, obviously, you were listening.
Absolutely. I'm always kind of lurking in the back. I'm kind of like a Twitter stalker, finding my opportunity to jump into some kind of conversation, inject myself into that, and apparently it worked this time, so I'm grateful for that opportunity. Now, you mentioned being in New York, doing GMFB. What does your pre-game prep look like? Like, I know when I come onto a pod, there's really no prep. I do a little bit of research on who I'm bringing on and this and that, but we're talking, how much prep can you do? Like, you guys start recording like 5 a.m. or something ridiculous. Like, I need to have at least 6 cups of coffee in by that point, and then that brings up another question altogether once you get on the show, if I have that much coffee.
I'm still drinking it. Yeah, the coffee's insane. It's become more than addiction. It's become a livelihood. But the prep is all day. It's always on my phone. So my role in the show is I'm kind of the NFL insider. And if I know that tomorrow we're going to be talking about the Bears quarterback position, I'll be texting people in Chicago, people around the league, agents of the players involved, and I'll be trying to get as much information as possible. But we usually typically know a skeleton of what we're going to talk about around 5:00 the night before. And then overnight, if there's news, things change. And during the season, we react off the games. But the prep work is constant. It's part of my livelihood. It is why I'm on the show. And it's a constant desire to gather new information from the right sources and to not just throw stuff at the wall and just hypothesize. As far as some of the fun segments on our show and the creativity and the stuff that's outside the box that makes our show our own, that's what I get a kick out of. And that prep work, that can be in a different way. But really right before the show, the hour before the show, I'll be completely honest with you, we do a production call, which means all the producers on the show and all the hosts are on a call. We go through this show, but I like to just relax for the last hour before the show. And I don't care if the world's going nuts around me. Like, I'll put on a podcast or some music. And in many cases in my dressing room, which we have, I'll put on Everybody Loves Raymond and watch like a 2003 sitcom just to not think about football and to just be able to relax before I go on air. Because if I'm all worked up and stressed, it's not very fun to watch.
So you're back in the studio now. You did a bunch of shows from home. Can you compare the two? Like, is it good to be back in the studio, or was it enjoyable being home? Like, you mentioned your kids and stuff, and you kind of get to work from home. But at some point, like, I got 14 kids. It's good to get out of the home.
Excuse me. How many kids do you have?
Yeah, that was correct. There's 14 of them here. I'm like the Canadian Philip Rivers is what I can refer to myself as.
No, Philip Rivers is the American Matt Donnelly. I think that's pretty good, right? Wow, 14 is something different. I only have one, but I have found the ability to get in studio to be huge for our show, because we're a show that's based on chemistry and conversation. And it's a little technical to discuss, but when you're on these home shows, now you and I are doing a one-on-one conversation right now. That's okay. It's a dialogue. When you put 4 people on the screen at once and a question is posed, you need to know who's talking when they're going to end. How do I get involved? When can I get my point in? Okay, we have a commercial break coming, but we can't make eye contact to say I have another point. And all of this has to be done almost with sleight of hand and without the viewer noticing all the difficulties. So by a million. And I would say anybody who watched our home shows and enjoyed it, we appreciate it. But we must tell you, it's not our proudest stuff that we put on film. It's almost like a football player who was playing injured. I feel like we had our hands tied behind our backs. We did everything we could. It was a necessity. I thought we did great given the circumstances. But our shows are infinitely better in person, in studio, being ourselves, being comfortable and interacting than they are in remote. And I think that's, to be completely honest, I think that's all these shows. I look at NFL Live on ESPN. I look at some of the late night talk shows without audiences. They just fall flat. It's not the same thing. And Good Morning Football was no different. It was serviceable. It got us through what we needed to do. But gosh, it is so good to be in person with my brothers and sisters on the air.
It's like Everybody That Loves Raymond, but not having the laugh track to kind of back that up. You know, it's a simple thing. Being in studio is a simple thing. The laugh track's a simple thing, but without it, it's not the same.
It's not the same.
I'm pitching you. You're walking to the studio now. Maybe Cam Newton-esque, big hat, feather boa, or something like that.
Yeah.
You're getting ready. Some big Boss headphones or whatever else we were promoting here at the time. Major League Baseball, WWE superstar coming to the ring, coming in to close the 9th inning. What's that music you're rolling up to GMFB Studios in?
Oh, wow, that's good. You know what? In a lot of cases, I'm going 90s alt rock. Like, I'll be coming in with some Pearl Jam or some Stone Temple Pilots, but I would say the Killers. And I know they might not be the rock snob's favorite band, but the Killers, any album, I love the Killers, and not Mr. Brightside necessarily, but maybe a little deeper cut. Maybe I'm the Man, which is something that was recent coming out there, or Sam's Town. I'm a big Killers fan, so I will put in some Killers music, and that'll get me ready to go. And I know that might be for everybody, especially the hard rock fans who don't view the Killers in the same way that I do, which I would say, Matt, one of the best live shows. When those things reopen, the best live show you will see is a Killers show. It is that good, that high energy, and Brandon Flowers is the man. How's that?
You sold me. I love high energy. I'm all about the high energy. I'm a little bit different though. I needed something to kind of calm me down.
Oh, what are you listening to? You got Enya, Kenny G. What are we doing?
You know what? Whatever the mood's kind of going. Like I haven't quite even thought about this question that I've asked everyone else.
Yeah.
Because it's like what am I feeling at that time? It might be something slow. You know what? I might even throw on a little bit of wham just for a little wake me up before I go. Something
It's okay.
to get you kind of loose. You know what I mean?
That's all right.
Lots of people got into football in many different ways here. How did you get into football? What is the grind like in becoming one of the most well-connected and trusted voices in the National Football League?
Sleeping on a lot of couches, you said you have 14 kids. I had 5 roommates once in New York. Like it was, my 20s were and everything, the how it was not supposed to go was probably my 20s in this industry, where I just wrote for freelance columns that, they weren't paid for. I was, doing everything I can to get to the combine, hitching rides, whatever it took. And it was such a grind. And basically it's like survival of the fittest. And is this for everyone? Is this what you want? Because to be honest, I've gotten a lot of great opportunities just through networking and being a decent human being and being nice to people and doing good, smart work. But those opportunities are not handed out. I didn't go to a top university for journalism. I didn't have any of the big internships. I didn't have anything like that. So for me, it was relentlessly doing stuff on my own and then having several other jobs in addition to it. I think a lot of the people in the fantasy football space, as well as people who are trying to do independent things, know about this. You got a full-time job, and then you got to find the desire and the want to put the work in for those last 2 hours before you go to sleep. And that was me. I was writing freelance articles, sneaking it in while working other jobs. And then of course, calling in sick and going to the combine, like doing stuff like that, where for me, it was just a constant hustle and a grind. And then I got the biggest breaks that you could imagine when foxsports.com asked me if I wanted to write for them. And it was just a freelance column, but I had an opportunity to have an actual platform. That was in 2004. And with that platform, I was able to have a voice, and then I was able to use that to get into buildings, to get into arenas, and to be able to get into, buildings in the NFL. But it all started with a want and a do and a desire to do anything it could to make it, and not ever take the foot off the pedal. That's the crazy thing. It's, my 20s, I look back at them with a smile, despite how grueling it was to make a career doing what we're doing at the moment.
Yeah, it was kind of fun watching that. Going from the Emory Wheel newspaper to Fox Sports to having 2 bestsellers on newsstands there in Strength of a Champion and Out of the Blue, which you wrote with Victor Cruz. That's been kind of a nice little shoot up there that you've had for your career. But like you said, there was a lot of couch surfing that went into it. There was probably sleeping in a van by the river type of thing. You know what I mean? Like, and
you need a break. Like, look, everyone, the conversations now are, how do I get that first opportunity? Is it fair that me as a white male, gets that opportunity? All these things. Ironically enough, it's Victor Cruz who made my career for me. And Victor Cruz was a 25-year-old player in the NFL, but he could have chosen anybody to write his book with him. And basically, Out of the Blue was Victor Cruz's story. And I had covered Victor that season when he was with the Giants, and he had a choice to write that book with any writer, anyone. And he chose me, who was unproven and never written a book before. And I owe everything to Victor Cruz, former Giants wide receiver, because then we went on this wild ride where we wrote a book together, and that opened doors that never existed beforehand. So sometimes you just need that white knight and that person. And ironically for me, it was someone who was several years younger than me and somebody who wasn't in the media industry. It was an actual NFL player who helped open those doors for me.
Did he give you a little bit of salsa dancing lessons there too while the book was going down? Because that seems like something that you throw in there just because.
Yeah, that guy's the man. Victor, the salsa dance was such a popular deal, but he's got such a deep story, such a deep person, and his playing days are done. And I know he's got a lot of different business interests and everything, but like the salsa dance, that is a shout out to his heritage and to his grandmother. And he has no regrets about that thing. And he wrote that thing all the way to the moon because he was doing it at the Grammy Awards a couple of weeks later.
No, that's absolutely crazy. Anyone who follows football, not even just New York Giants fans, has to love Victor Cruz. Yeah. There's nothing not to love about
him. Story.
What he's done. You've been doing this for a while. Like I mentioned, there's the books that you've written, Fox Sports, NFL Network, all that stuff. What gets you excited today still? And how do you recharge? Because it's a grind. It really is.
It's not. I mean, It's so funny because I can complain to my wife maybe about having to wake up at 4 a.m. every day, especially in June and July. But the truth of the matter is, if I wasn't doing this, there'd be a line 6 million deep of people who would do it for free and would do it probably with the same passion that I always have. My big thing is I've got to stay focused on how blessed I am that I can do this for a living. This is how I put food on the table for my family. And I'm talking football, and I'm doing something that I would probably do for free. I love it so much. So it's a grind. The recharge is key. I mean, our show, it's really it's all year round. So when you get that time off, you've got to really separate yourself. But what gets me really fired up, honestly, a story like the Buccaneers this year, a story where this is a mediocre franchise in a sport where it's every year is a new story. So mediocre franchise gets the greatest quarterback ever to choose them and put his faith in them. And then they put their faith in him. And there's this weird match during a pandemic where they can't really work together in the off season. And then they start off slow. They're not that great. And they go to the bye week in week 13. Something happens and they don't lose another game and they're hoisting a Lombardi. And Brady at 43 years old tells the greatest fairy tale of all that, age is only a number. So you get stories like that every year. And if it wasn't that one, it was the Patriots Dynasty another year, reviving it, or it was the Chiefs or whatever it is. So what I love about our game, as opposed to maybe the NBA or NHL or Major League Baseball, once that season ends and the next season starts, it's really a clean slate. And there are 32 fan bases who are so excited because they think that maybe they could be the Buccaneers this year. Maybe it's their year. Maybe Nick Foles does an Eagles run with their team this year. It's so unpredictable. And I think I like that the most, that all 32 teams, you walk into a season. Some teams are favored more than others, but gosh, it is wide open as to who can hoist that Lombardi at the end of the year.
I think even more important is Vita Vea finally got his hug from Tom Brady when it was all said and done. Right?
You saw that on the show, huh? That's great.
Absolutely. We kind of talk about that recharging. I bet you probably almost feel recharged coming into the studio when you get great people to work with like Kay and Kyle and Nate and Will Silva comes into mind there too. Yeah. It just energizes you. Their energy feeds your energy, and this all kind of goes together. What are some of those important relationships that have helped you along your way to your path, whether that's your professor at Emory University or like who are some of those biggest influences in your life?
A couple guys on the writing side of it. There's a gentleman named Tom Seeley who used to work at foxsports.com. He was really helpful in opening a door and providing a platform for me. Jacob Ullman is a gentleman who works for Fox who now is in charge of hiring a lot of the people you see on air, but at the time had many hats. And, I was just a writer for foxsports.com, and he said, let's give this guy a shot on TV. And then with Good Morning Football, it's all behind the scenes people. The president of the network's a guy named Mark Quinzel. He took a risk on me with having never done a daily TV show. Another gentleman named Michael Davies. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the Men in Blazers. The Men in Blazers is a soccer podcast, but it's also a video, and it's Michael and his friend Roger. And Michael is one of the guys on air on the show. He talks all the time about Manchester United and does all these things. And it's a very popular podcast. In Michael's other world, where he does that for fun, more or less, as a podcast, he's a very influential and creative TV producer. And he helped come up with the idea of Good Morning Football, which was a morning football show that isn't so hardcore. It's not X's and O's. It's more like you would watch the Today Show or Good Morning America or whatever show is the morning show out in Canada, where you wake up to it and you can have a bagel and relax, and it's not two people screaming at each other, or it's not just a guy at a whiteboard showing how to do the 3-4 scheme. So I owe it to a lot of people, but those are some of the key ones that professionally were so important. And of course, my wife and my parents for supporting me on this journey, which wasn't an orthodox one for someone who was coming out with a political science degree out of a college in Atlanta, Georgia.
Well, GMFB is my morning show here because I love the setup. Whoever came up, like you said, the idea of this, putting this together, and the crude, like everything is perfect for me. It's what I want in my TV show. I love the back and forth banter that goes on, the improv. There's plenty of improv that goes on daily. So, and it keeps the listeners and probably you guys on your toes.
Yeah, I don't know what I would do if it wasn't for Kyle and Nate making me laugh every morning with some random reference. I mean, Kyle's an encyclopedia with it, but don't sleep on Nate. Nate knows every movie from the 80s and 90s, knows every actor, every comedian. That's the gift. When you have an ex-athlete, you often want to say, oh, he's just a jock. I think Nate Burleson has as much pop culture knowledge as any single person on our network. And I think that's a gift to our show, which I think was maybe an added bonus to what we didn't even know we were getting when we first started the show.
Yeah, and look at Nate now. He's doing even bigger things too on top of it. So he's one of the busiest guys in show business right now. Part of the job is interviewing some of the biggest names around in sports and in entertainment. You've been doing the NFL draft, the NBA draft. I think it was the 2014 Sochi Olympics you're a part of. Do you ever recall being starstruck on the job, and how did that go? Was it like a John Madden you're doing? You're like, oh, I'm talking John Madden, but you got to be cool though, right?
Yeah. It's funny. Like, yeah. And I think you hit it with the broadcasting part of it. I'm not ever blown away by the athletes. Actually, I'll take it back. When I'm in the presence of Brady, it is different. I know it sounds so corny, but like Brady's really special. And I've interviewed Brady a few times in person. And then recently I got to do a Zoom one-on-one with Brady since the Super Bowl after he won the MVP award. And like Brady he's such an incredible leader, and he defies everything as far as time and health and, just philosophy. I just think Brady's a rare breed. But broadcasting, I think that's so interesting you say that, because I never saw myself as a potential athlete. To me, I was going to be either the great sports writer of our times or someone as a talking head. So when I finally got to meet Jim Nantz, and he couldn't have been cooler, and Jim Nantz was like the sweetest, nicest man, and gave me his email and said, email me anytime you want. And I sent him a couple clips of stuff I've written about, and he responds like, that's the stuff that's crazy, because you know how busy these guys are, and they aren't, pushing me aside or being competitive. It's no, come on into underneath the umbrella. So Jim Nantz, Chris Collinsworth, Phil Simms, Troy Aikman. Troy Aikman is a doll, is the man, like the coolest guy. And then people like James Brown and Michael Strahan. I've gotten a chance to meet these guys, and you're not starstruck, but you're amazed at so much how they're such kind human beings despite their celebrity status. And I'll never be at those guys' level, but you do learn a little something about how you treat people. And as I get older in this industry, I try to think about how Jim Nantz treated me, or how a Michael Strahan treats people on the Fox NFL show that I get to work on. And I see the way he connects with younger generations by just being kind and caring about them. I think that stuff matters. So, I've met Matt Stafford and Matt Ryan a million times. I'm not going to, be giddy about it. But when I got to meet Jim Nantz and I got to meet Joe Buck, and those guys were as cool as I would hope they would be, that's the stuff that really matters.
It's really amazing what a simple follow on Twitter or a response to a DM or an interaction, what that can do for someone. Like maybe someone in your shoes right now, you don't quite, it's only a follow, not a big deal. But that other person on the other end is like, oh, he followed. I got a response from Schrager, or whatever that is. They get excited about it. It's the simple things in life that we do that may mean a whole lot to other people out there.
Matt, I'm going to jump on that, because I think the Twitter thing is so toxic, and I look at it with a really antagonistic lens where, gosh, everyone's so upset about politics, and everybody's so upset about, sports. And if you say something on Twitter, it becomes, and then you'll see you respond to some of the people that hate you. Like there's people that hate me on Twitter because I've got opinions and I'm on TV and whatever it is. And then you respond to that person, and you'll maybe say, yesterday I made a mistake. I called Denzel Mims, the wide receiver from the Jets, I called him Darnell Mims. And, I don't take any pride in that. It's whatever. I made a mistake. Obviously, I know the gentleman's name. I said it wrong. And on Twitter, this guy says, I don't give a peep what Schrager has to say. Can't even do the 2 seconds of prep work to know the player's name. Why should he be on TV? I can't look at him. He's ugly. He's fat, whatever. And I respond to the guy. I go, it's Denzel Mims. My bad. My mistake. And he writes back within 30 seconds. Oh, it's awesome that you responded. Yeah, I know. It was a simple mistake. Happens all the time, I'm sure. All good. Love you. Big fan of your work. And I'm like, that's the thing. But that's it. That's it. A lot of the times it's not trying to elicit a reaction. People are angry and they're on Twitter and on the keyboards. But if you actually interact with the person, you realize we're all the same. We're just talking football, and it's hopefully that's the norm, and not the other case where people actually do hate me for being fat and ugly and all the other things that I hear.
Well, I've always had a face for radio and a voice for the silent picture. So I could totally relate to that. But football really is a language. I've met so many people on the Twitter machine that speak Portuguese or whatever. We might understand what we're saying, but bring up football, you throw some clips out there, and everyone speaks that same language.
Yep.
One last thing before I let you out of here. you've kind of touched on it a little bit, but what's some of that advice you'd like to share for those trying to get into the broadcasting, trying to make a name for themselves? We kind of touched on be excellent, a little bit of reference there.
Yeah. I would say, and I do get a lot of emails and a lot of friends of friends of friends saying, hey, my son is graduating X university and he's going to go potentially work in a restaurant or be a lawyer, but he really loves football. What can he do? How does he get your job? I would say this: you have to be a self-starter. I'm looking right now at the Dynasty Vipers video, and I'm not making a joke. The fact that you're producing this on your own time with graphics and sound and you're booking guests and all that is 50% of what it is. And I would tell every college kid or anybody who's looking to make a change in their career, just do it. Just go for it. There is enough ability now with YouTube and with Facebook and with Twitter and Instagram that if you love the NFL draft, post about the NFL draft 18 times a day and you do your cut-ups and you give your opinions. If you think Trevor Lawrence is overrated, say it. And here's why. And there will be an audience. People will see it. And if you're consistent with it, you don't give up and you don't get discouraged, that is the most important thing. And the second thing I would say, which I think has been, and I hope I keep it going, but just be nice to people. Be nice. No one wants to work with an asshole. No one wants to be discouraging. No one wants to have to think of you as a problem. I'd say 50% of the jobs that I got early on in my career were because I was persistent and because, you know what, this guy's not such a bad dude. He works hard and I actually think he's pretty smart and I don't mind having him around. Let's bring him on. I was a writer for many years, but I was also a writer on several different sports TV shows, which is a low paying, job relatively, like what in the org chart of all it goes. But why would they hire me over another person? Because I was okay to be around. You can throw me in the room. I'm not going to piss you off. I'm not going to be annoying and I'm going to try to offer 2 cents where it matters. So be resourceful, be a self-starter. There's no excuse. There's no reason anybody who wants to do this for a living shouldn't have their own thing already up and running before they make the leap into whatever it is they want to do next. I just do it, and then be nice along the way. And things usually find themselves and hopefully they work themselves out.
Well, Peter, I want to thank you for your time here. You've given more time than I think we were talking about earlier, so that's definitely appreciated on this end of things. I don't even know if I have to say this, but you want to tell people where they might be able to find you if they don't already know?
I'm actually not on Instagram. I'm not on Clubhouse. I'm not on a lot of that stuff. I stick to just Twitter. It's P Schrags, PSCHRAGS. And then every morning, if you get NFL Network, we're on from 7 to 10, and then the show re-airs from 10 to 1. So there's 6 hours of our show on NFL Network in the morning. And then on Sundays during the NFL season, I work for Fox Sports. And that's an awesome job too. I'm on the pregame show for those guys. So plenty of places to find me. I just won't be posting too many pics of my kids on vacation at Instagram.
Fair enough. I tried not to post any pictures of my kids either because I'd run out of film. For Peter Schrager, I'm Matt Donnelly. This is the Dynasty Vipers ViperCast. See you next week.